Hey, welcome back. Something I've noticed about ACE students is they almost never leave their schedule to chance. They've almost always planned it out ahead of time. And I think there's a lot of value in that. So the first video we're going to do here on our path to having a great semester is we're going to take a look at your schedule. And we're going to look at the classes you're taking and try to roughly estimate how much time you're going to need to put in day by day, week by week, in order to stay on top of it. And then what we're going to do is schedule that time, right? Try to find spaces in your schedule for that preparation time. And the goal is to make a weekly template of your academic life that's both comprehensive in that it handles everything you need it to handle, but that it's also flexible enough in case any tests or essays or projects come up. So let's get started. Feel free to pause the video at this point and fire up your calendar application because we're going to be doing some scheduling. If you don't have a calendar application yet, my best recommendation is to use Google Calendar. Really easy to get started, very simple to use, synchronizes beautifully with your mobile devices. I've been using this for years, highly recommend. Now, the first thing we're going to do, if you haven't done this yet, is we're going to go ahead and just punch in your class schedule itself. And something I recommend you do is to create a new calendar for each class. So if you have a class that's just literature 1 or something like that, we're going to create a calendar specifically for literature 1. And then let's say you have your lit 1 lecture. We're going to go ahead and assign it to that new calendar we just created. And what this is going to do is it's going to keep all of our classes neatly color coded for us, so it's kind of easy to tell at a glance what we're doing. Something I really like about Google Calendar and a lot of other similar programs is that you have the option of repeating an event. So again, we're going to punch in that literature 1 lecture, and if you go to edit event, you have the option of repeating this event every, for instance, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you could end it on, you could go to the very end of the semester, and what that'll do is it'll then fill in this event Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every single week until the end of the semester, and you only have to do it once. At this point, feel free to pause the video and spend a few minutes to fill in your whole class schedule. All right, at this point, you should have something that looks roughly like this. Now, this is a real schedule from a real student that I pulled off the internet. He is a freshman student, and he's attempting to join the business school at my alma mater, UC Berkeley. So what I like about this schedule is it has a nice even mix of the 3 different types of classes. So let's talk about that. The first type of class is what I call a hardcore skills class. And it's often stuff like math or hard sciences where you have to learn the skill of doing calculations. But it can also be something like art or even musicianship where you're having to learn the skill of doing art or learn the skill of playing the violin or something like that. What these classes have in common is that they all have a skill that really just requires consistent effort to get good at. So for these classes, I recommend that for every 1 hour you spend in class, you spend another hour sometime the day of or the day before preparing for that class. So let's look here at this Astro C10 lecture. Now this is an astronomy class, so chances are it has a lot of calculations in it. So we're going to assume it's a hardcore skills class. And looks like on Monday from 3 to 4 o'clock, we have our Astro lecture. So I'm going to go ahead and say that right before that lecture, we are going to do Astro C10 prep. And that's going to be, make sure to add it to that same calendar. And we're going to have that repeat every week on Monday. So what this means is that every Monday in the hour before we go to Astro lecture, we're going to go someplace like a library or a coffee shop on campus, and we're going to spend an hour preparing for that lecture. Same thing on Wednesday, we're going to want to go ahead and take this preparation work that we did, and we're going to want to actually make it count for Wednesday and Friday as well because we have room for that. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this event, and I'm going to have it repeat not just on Monday but also on Wednesday and Friday. Boom. Okay, so it filled that in. Okay, the next type of class after a hardcore skills class is an essays class. And this Rhetoric R1A class is a perfect example. Essays classes, they don't require quite as much prep time as a hardcore skills class, but they still require a good amount of it. because you're going to need to do a lot of reading. So for a essays class, what I recommend is for every hour of class, you want to spend either 40 or 45 minutes preparing. So here we have an hour and a half of class. So what I'm going to recommend is that we spend an hour preparing. And so it looks like on Tuesday, we have a gap in between our classes. And I'm going to go ahead and have us do our rhetoric preparation right there. Rhetoric R1A prep. And again, we're going to assign that to the rhetoric calendar. And we are going to make that a recurring event every Tuesday so that we're always going to do it. And then same thing right here. I'm going to go ahead and have us do it right before class. And again, it's rhetoric R1A prep. We're going to assign it to the rhetoric R1A calendar. And we're going to have it repeat every Thursday right before a rhetoric class. Now, the last type of class is what I call a memorization class. You don't have any skills to demonstrate. There usually aren't really that many essays, and there's usually not a whole ton of reading, although there is some consistent reading. So for a memorization class, we have two on this schedule. We have History 24 and we have Poli-Sci 179. My recommendation for these is for every hour you spend in class, spend just a half hour preparing. So History 24, I'm going to go ahead and right before History 24, I'm going to say that we're going to do a half hour of prep work for class. And again, we're going to go ahead and shorten that to just a half hour. And then we're going to have it repeat every week on Tuesday. Bam. And then, of course, we're going to do the same thing for Poli-Sci 179. And so at this point, following that rule of 1 hour per hour of hardcore skills classes, about 45 minutes per hour of essay classes, and about half hour per hour of memorization classes, go ahead and fill in all of the prep time. Find gaps in your schedule for that stuff. Okay, now that you've filled in all your prep time, you should have something that looks roughly like this. And you could see for each of these lectures, we've filled in a corresponding amount of preparation time, either the same day or the 1 or 2 days before. Now at this point, what I recommend you do is make a new calendar and call it library time. And what this is a calendar for just generic library time. Now you can see here in our schedule that we've got a lot of gaps remaining between our classes. So what I recommend you do here is fill in those big gaps with 2-hour chunks of library time. Alright, so you can see here I went ahead and filled in 4 of the major gaps in this person's schedule with 2-hour blocks of library time. And the reason this is so important is because this is what gives us the flexibility to handle extra heavy weeks worth of workload. Right, like we've already got our preparation time in there, and that's going to be pretty much every week. What this allows us to do is we already have time built in our schedule to handle anything else that comes up, like quizzes, preparing for midterms, extra projects, or even essays. This extra time that we've added should be enough to handle most, if not all, that extra stuff. So go ahead and take a couple minutes right now, find the gaps in your schedule to where it wouldn't really make sense to go home for the day, and go ahead and fill those in with library time. Alright, high five for making it this far. We are almost done here. There's just one step that remains, and the final step is to fill in all of the non-school related stuff that you do. Now really try to think about what each day is going to look like. For instance, if I have to be at class at 10 a.m. 5 days a week, what time do I have to wake up to make that happen? Right? Like how much time do you need to shower, get dressed, get all your stuff together? How long does it take you to walk to class? That sort of thing. And go ahead and punch that in. So maybe you wake up at 8:30. So at 8:30 you would put wake up / go to class. And you would go ahead and schedule that. Right? You notice here that we left some gaps in between classes, usually around when lunchtime happens. So feel free to go ahead and schedule lunch. You know, when class is over, we have some gaps here where it would be really great to eat dinner. So maybe 6:30 every day you want to go ahead and eat dinner. So go ahead and punch all that stuff in, and up to and including social stuff. Like if you have a club that meets at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays. You know, maybe you're in the chess club or something like that. Go ahead and punch that in too. The idea here is to get all of the regular weekly stuff that you do, go ahead and punch that in your calendar so that this calendar is going to really represent a pretty accurate look at what your week's going to look like. I have one final recommendation for you, which is this. Try to be realistic with yourself. And what I mean is, let's say that you've scheduled yourself 4 hours of library time at the very end of a long day, right? Now, maybe you're a badass, super hardcore worker and you can do that. There were points in my life where there was absolutely no way I could have motivated myself to do 4 hours of extra work on top of a super long workday. And if I had went ahead and scheduled that for myself at the time, I would have been setting myself up for failure because I was being too optimistic. You know what I mean? So you got to know yourself, right? Like if you've been in class for like 7 hours, are you going to go be able to do 4 more hours of homework? I mean, if you are, all power to you. But if that sounds kind of like a tall order, like maybe you're not quite up for it, you got to honor that feeling. And the best way to do that is to take all of the homework you have to do and try to spread it out over the course of your week. And that's what I've tried to do here with this person's schedule. I tried to schedule all of his library time during the day, during his gaps in between classes, so that we left his evenings relatively open so that he's able to go relax and have fun and recharge himself for the next day. So that's it for this video. Again, thank you for making it this far. Pat yourself on the back for putting a bunch of effort into taking care of your grades and taking care of your academic life. Next week's video is going to be all about reading for class. The 3 types of reading that they'll assign, how to recognize which is which, and what specific technique to use for each type of reading. Until next time, if you like this, go ahead and subscribe. Look forward to seeing you next week, and in the meantime, get out there, kick some ass.